Imagine yourself in complete darkness with your heart pounding in your chest. What are you most afraid of? Is it the unknown, the thought of failure, the sight of a needle perhaps? Or maybe it's the haunting sensation of being all alone. These fears are deeply ingrained in us, shaping our lives in profound ways. Today we're going to uncover the roots of these fears and explore the path to overcoming them. Since the dawn of mankind, our primal need has always been survival. This deeply ingrained instinct is actually the catalyst for our fear of death, often referred to as thanatophobia. This universal fear is not merely about ceasing to exist, it also encompasses the terror of the uncertain. After all, what's more enigmatic than what comes after? Our cultural religious beliefs can give shape to our perceptions about death. For some, death serves as a gateway to an afterlife, an idea which can be both comforting and frightening. For others, death signifies the end of consciousness, which can be a daunting thought. While these beliefs offer a structure to comprehend death, they can also amplify our fears. But it's crucial to remember that fear is part and parcel of the human condition. It's not a defect, but a testament to our understanding and perception of the world around us. It's our mind's way of hitting pause button and saying, "Wait, I'm not ready for this just yet." So, what happens when this fear becomes overwhelming and starts to hinder daily life? That's when therapeutic coping mechanisms like counseling and existential therapy can prove helpful. These therapies aid individuals in navigating their feelings about mortality and finding ways to reconcile with the inevitable nature of death. They encourage the acceptance of death as a normal part of life and advocate living life in a way that aligns one's values and desires. If you're grappling with the fear of death, you're not alone. There are ways to manage this fear, comprehend it, and come to terms with it. Understanding that death is a natural part of life can help to alleviate some of the fear. But it's absolutely normal to seek help if this fear becomes overwhelming. Have you ever been so afraid of failing at something that you decided not to try it at all? This is about the fear of failure. Fear of failure, or acrophobia, is a common human experience. It's deeply rooted in our psyche, woven into the fabric of our societal norms and personal experiences. Imagine a child in a spelling bee, heart pounding with the fear of misspelling a word in front of the whole school. Or perhaps a young adult, paralyzed by the fear of not landing the perfect job or failing to meet their parents' expectations. These are just glimpses of how fear of failure manifests in our lives. Societal pressure plays a significant role in fostering this fear. We live in a world that champions success, often overlooking the journey that leads to it. The value we place on winning and achieving can create an environment where even the thought of failure feels unbearable. Personal experiences also contribute to this fear. A history of punitive responses to mistakes or failure can condition us to associate failure with pain or rejection, exacerbating this fear. But here's the good news. This fear, like all fears, can be managed and even conquered. Cognitive therapy is one such approach that has shown promise. It focuses on reframing our thoughts and perceptions about failure. Instead of viewing failure as a terrifying end, cognitive therapy encourages us to see it as a stepping stone, an opportunity to learn and grow. Positive thinking and resilience are also crucial. By fostering a positive mindset, we can begin to see failures not as catastrophes but as valuable lessons. Resilience, or the ability to bounce back from setbacks, allows us to face failure without fear, knowing we have the strength to rise again. The fear of failure is complex and deeply personal, but it's not insurmountable. With the right tools and mindset, we can reframe our perception of failure and embrace it as an integral part of our journey towards success. Remember, failure is not the opposite of success, it's part of success. Do you feel faint at the sight of needles? This is about the fear of needles, or trypanophobia. From the most primitive times, the human body has evolved to react instinctively to certain stimuli. Injury and the sight of blood are two such triggers that can set off alarm bells in our brains. This is an evolutionary drive, a survival mechanism to keep us safe from harm. When we see a needle approaching our skin, our brain perceives it as an impending injury, and this perception can trigger a fear response. This is one of the fundamental origins of trypanophobia. Now, imagine a world where you're not just afraid of needles, but you're terrified of them. The mere sight of a needle in a picture sends shivers down your spine. You feel your heart rate increase, your palms start sweating, and you might even feel dizzy or nauseous. This is the reality for many people living with trypanophobia. It's a fear that can be debilitating, hindering essential medical procedures or vaccinations that require the use of needles. But there's good news. Trypanophobia, like many phobias, can be managed and even overcome. One of the most effective methods is through gradual exposure therapy. This is a process that involves slowly and repeatedly exposing the person to the object of their fear, in this case needles, in a controlled and safe environment. The process might start with simply looking at pictures of needles, then gradually move on to holding a needle, and eventually to watching a needle penetrate the skin in a video. The final step might involve undergoing mock injections, where the person experiences the sensation of an injection without the needle actually penetrating the skin. This process helps to desensitize the individual to the fear stimulus, reducing the intensity of their fear response over time. It's not an overnight fix, and it requires patience and persistence, but with consistent effort, it's possible to reduce the fear to a manageable level, or even eliminate it entirely. Overcoming the fear of needles is a gradual process, but with patience and persistence, it can be conquered. Do you dread the thought of being alone even for a short period of time? This is about the fear of being alone. From an evolutionary perspective, this fear makes a lot of sense. Our ancestors knew there was safety in numbers. As members of a tribe or community, they shared resources, protected one another, and faced threats together. Being alone meant vulnerability to predators, to the elements, and to other humans. Over time, this understanding has been deeply ingrained in our psyche, leading to a widespread fear of solitude. The fear of being alone isn't just about physical solitude, though. It's also about emotional isolation. We are social creatures, after all. We thrive on connection, on shared experiences. When we're alone, we're cut off from these connections. The fear of being alone then can also be a fear of disconnection, of not being understood or appreciated. But here's the thing, being alone doesn't necessarily equate to loneliness. In fact, solitude can be a powerful tool for self-discovery and personal growth. And that's where therapy can come in. Therapy can help us build self-confidence and develop coping strategies for when we're alone. It can help us learn to enjoy our own company, to value our solitude. Therapists can guide us in exploring our fears, in understanding why we're afraid of being alone. They can teach us how to challenge negative thought patterns, how to replace fear with acceptance and even enjoyment. Some techniques that therapists might use include cognitive behavioral therapy, which focuses on changing negative thought patterns and behaviors, and mindfulness-based therapies, which teach us to stay present and engaged in the moment, rather than worrying about the past or the future. So, if the fear of being alone is holding you back, consider reaching out for help. Therapy can provide the tools and support you need to overcome this fear and embrace the possibilities of solitude. Remember, being alone doesn't mean you're lonely. It's okay to enjoy your own company.